This is the Linear Algebra Lectures video series. You can find more information about this video as well as a link to the written textbook in the description below. Stick around to the end of the video to learn more about this video series and the associated teaching and learning tools I've created for it. Lecture 38, Orthogonal Sets. Our objectives for this lecture are to determine whether a given set of vectors is orthogonal, compute the coordinates of a vector relative to an orthogonal basis, and compute the orthogonal projection of one vector onto another. So let's recall some definitions from lecture 37. If we have two vectors in Rn, the inner product, or sometimes called dot product, of u and v is u dot v, which is the result of multiplying the corresponding entries of the two vectors and adding up the results. And we said that u and v are orthogonal if that dot product is the scalar 0. Now in this lecture, we're going to be talking about orthogonal sets of vectors. So a set of vectors v1 through vp in Rn is an orthogonal set if those vectors are pairwise orthogonal. So that means that whenever we compute the dot product vi dot vj for different subscripts I and j, the result is always 0. And so for example, the standard basis e1 through en in Rn is a set of vectors that are mutually orthogonal, and so they form an orthogonal set. If we take ei dot ej for any two different subscripts I and j, the result is 0. So here we have an example of three vectors in R3, and we want to show that u1, u2, and u3 form an orthogonal set. So the way we do this is we compute a whole bunch of dot products. So for example, we can first compute u1 dot u2. Notice that those two subscripts 1 and 2 are different, and we compute that dot product and get the result 0. We compute u1 dot u3 and also get 0. And then we compute u2 dot u3 and once again get 0. The only dot products that we need to compute that we haven't computed yet are these same dot products in the other order. And dot product is commutative, so u2 dot u1 is the same as u1 dot u2, and so all of those other dot products are also 0. So all 6 of these dot products being 0 tells us that this is an orthogonal set. The bigger your set of vectors, the more of these dot products you'll have to compute to verify that the set is in fact orthogonal. Now this theorem tells us that any orthogonal set of non-zero vectors must be linearly independent. So to do this, we're going to just go back to the definition of linear independence. Linear independence would say that the only way that you could form a linear combination of these vectors and get the 0 vector as a result is if all those scalars are 0. So we set up a linear combination, c1v1 plus c2v2 plus 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 through cpvp equals the 0 vector, and our goal now is to show that each of those c scalars is 0. So our first step is going to be to take that equation and take the dot product of both sides with the vector v1. On the left-hand side, we can distribute that dot product, and then we can rearrange the scalars, pulling the c's to the front of those dot products. And on the right-hand side, we should realize that the dot product of any vector with the 0 vector will be the scalar 0. So that gives us an expression that looks like this. c1 times the dot product v1 dot v1 plus c2 times v1 dot v2 plus 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 through cp times v1 dot vp equals the scalar 0. But now we need to recognize that because our set of vectors is orthogonal, most of those dot products are 0. In fact, all of the dot products, v1 dot v sub something else other than 1, all of those are going to be 0 because the set is orthogonal. So this equation simplifies quite a bit. We just get c1 times the dot product v1 dotted with itself. And that's equal to the scalar 0. And the only way you can have two real numbers multiplied together giving you 0 is if one of those two numbers is 0. So either c1 is 0 or v1.v1 is 0. But v1 was a non-zero vector, which means it has a non-zero length, and that means that v1.v1 cannot be 0, and that means that c1 has to be 0. Now our goal is to show that all of the c's are 0, but we can do the same kind of argument to show that the rest of the c's are also 0. Instead of dotting both sides with the vector v1, we would dot both sides with the vector v2, and that would eventually show us that c2 is 0. And continuing in a similar way, we show that all the c's are 0. And that means that our set of vectors must be linearly independent. Now, given a subspace H of Rn, an orthogonal basis for H is a basis that also happens to be an orthogonal set. And it turns out that when we have an orthogonal basis, computing coordinates is much easier. In lecture 31, we learned about the coordinates of a vector relative to a basis. So if we have a basis script B containing the vectors v1 through vp, and if that's a basis for a subspace H, then given any vector y in H, we can write y uniquely as a linear combination of the v's, and the weights in that linear combination form what we call the coordinates of that vector y. And the notation we use for this is brackets of y subscript b. So that just represents the coordinate vector of y. Now, normally, the way that we find these coordinates is by solving the vector equation that you see here. We solve that equation for the c's, and that tells us what the c's are to tell us what the coordinates are. But this theorem tells us that when we have an orthogonal basis, the coordinates are much easier to compute, and in fact, all we need to do is compute y.vi divided by vi.vi for each of our basis vectors, and those will give me the coordinates of the vector y. So let's prove it. So remember that we have this equation which just represents what it means for the c's to be the coordinates of y relative to the basis b. And similar to the previous theorem, we're going to start by taking the dot product of both sides. We're going to dot both sides by the vector vi. Similar to what we did in the previous theorem, we're going to distribute and pull the scalars out front. And again, we're going to remember that this is an orthogonal set of vectors, which means that most of these dot products are 0. And in fact, the only one of these dot products that isn't 0 is vi.vi. So that gives us y.vi equals ci times vi.vi. And all we need to do now is divide both sides by vi.vi. And that gives us ci equals y.vi divided by vi.vi. And that's what the theorem says, so we're done. Let's take a look at an example. So here we have two vectors v and w, and we write h equaling the span of v and w. And we want to show that script b, which is the set containing v and w, is an orthogonal basis for h. Okay, so how do we show that something is an orthogonal basis? Well, let's start with the word basis. Remember that basis means two things. It means that the set is linearly independent, and in this case, we just have two vectors in our set, which means that we can verify that neither vector is a multiple of the other to show that this is a linearly independent set. And the other part of the definition of basis is that these two vectors have to span the subspace. But we're given that. We're given that h is the span of v and w, and so this set, script b, is a basis for h. Why is it an orthogonal basis for h? Well, that's the new definition that we've learned in this lecture, and we have to show that the vectors in this set are pairwise orthogonal. Well, there's only two vectors in this set, so all we need to do is show that v.w is 0, and we compute that and verify that that's true as well. So that shows that this is an orthogonal basis for h. And now we want to apply the previous theorem. Now that we have an orthogonal basis, let's use it to find the coordinates of this vector u relative to the basis b. Remember, the old way, or the hard way to do this, is to solve the equation x1v plus x2w equals u. But now we have little formulas that we can use to compute those coordinates instead. All we need to do is compute u.v divided by v.v and u.w divided by w.w. We work all that out and we get the coordinates 3 and 1. And so that means that the coordinate vector we're looking for is the vector 3, 1. And we can verify that this is correct by computing 3v plus 1w, and we see that that in fact does equal u. Now, we can apply these ideas to a common problem that comes up in physics and some other fields of study, which is to decompose a vector into components that are orthogonal to each other. Some ways that we could apply this are when we have an object moving in 2 dimensions, we have a velocity vector that has a horizontal and a vertical component that we might need to study separately. We might have an object sliding down an incline that has forces acting on it that are parallel to the slope and perpendicular to the slope. So in general, the question is, if we have two vectors, u and y in Rn, we want to decompose y into two components, one of which is parallel to u and one of which is orthogonal to u. So in this case, y is the sum y1 plus y2. And y1 is parallel to u, which means it's some scalar multiple of u. We'll call that scalar alpha. So y1 equals alpha times u. And y2 is some vector orthogonal to u. And we say that y1 is the orthogonal projection of y onto u. So our question is, how do we compute y1? Well, because we know that y1 is alpha times u, really what we're looking to try to figure out is how do we compute alpha? Now, in the special case where u and y are parallel, then y1 is just y, and so that's the orthogonal projection. So let's consider the general case. If u and y are not parallel, then they span a two-dimensional subspace of Rn that we'll call a hyperplane. It's two-dimensional, so it's kind of like a plane in 3 dimensions, so the word that we use there is hyperplane. Now y is y1 plus y2, and y1 is a scalar multiple of u, and so it follows that u and y2 would also span the same hyperplane. But u and y2 are orthogonal to each other, which means that script b being equal to the set u and y2, that's an orthogonal basis for b. Our space is two-dimensional, and those two vectors are orthogonal, and so that means that it's an orthogonal basis. Now, because y is alpha times u, we can think of that as alpha u plus 0 y2. That means that the coordinates of y1 relative to this basis b are alpha 0. But we also have the previous theorem, which gives us a way to compute the coordinates in a different way. The coordinate alpha, the first component of my coordinate vector relative to this basis b, has to be y1 dotted with the first basis vector divided by that basis vector dotted with itself, y1.u divided by u.u. So that's alpha. I remember we were looking for a way to compute alpha, but it's not really helpful because we don't know what y1 is yet. But y is y1 plus y2. So y.u is y1 plus y2.u, and we can distribute, so we get y1.u plus y2.u. But y2.u is 0 because y2 and u are orthogonal, and so that means that y1.u is actually just equal to y.u. And so a better formula for alpha is y.u divided by u.u, and we know y. Y was one of the two vectors that we were given. So this gives us our formulas for y1 and y2. y1 is alpha times u, which is y.u divided by u.u times u, and y2 is just y minus y1, and so if we wanted to know what y2 was, we would just subtract y minus y1. So the vector y1 is called the orthogonal projection of y onto u, and so we write proj, which is just short for the word projection, subscript u, so the subscript tells you what vector you're projecting onto, of y, so y is the vector that we are projecting, and the formula is y.u divided by u.u times u. And again, if we wanted to figure out what y2 was, we would just subtract y minus y1. Let's take a look at this example. So we want to compute the orthogonal projection of y onto u. So our formula is y.u divided by u.u times u. So all we need to do is compute those two dot products and put them in the formula. So y.u works out to be negative 26, and u.u works out to be 21. So the projection that we're looking for is negative 26 over 21 times the vector u, which is the result that you can see here. In this example, we're asked to decompose the vector p into p1 plus p2, where p1 is parallel to q and p2 is orthogonal to q. So hopefully from the previous pictures that we were looking at, you realize that p1 is the orthogonal projection onto q of the vector p. And our formula for that is going to be p.q divided by q.q times q. We compute those dot products, we get p.q is negative 10, q.q is 18, and then when we multiply negative 10 over 18 times q and simplify, we get 0, 20/9, negative 5/9, negative 5/9. So that's p1. What's p2? Well, just like before, since p equals p1 plus p2, p2 is going to be p minus p1. We know p, we know p1, so we just subtract, and we get the vector negative 1, negative 2/9, 14/9, negative 22/9. And now we can verify that this vector p2 is in fact orthogonal to q. So we've decomposed the vector p into two vectors, one of which is parallel to q and one of which is orthogonal to q. Thanks for watching this video lecture. You can find links to the other videos in this series and to the written textbook in the description below. If you're an instructor, you can contact me for more information about the over 300 online linear algebra homework problems that I've created for the free My Open Math platform.